Good evening and welcome to Film Rose Lead's fifth speaker series, The Return. I'm Shelley Kratzer, Committee Chair of LEAD, and our mission here at LEAD is empowering underrepresented minorities in the entertainment industry through education and career development. And on behalf of the committee members, Melanie Valera, President of Film Row, Frank Martinez, Carl Luger, Tony Graham, John Sine, and Mariana Suarez, thank you for tuning in and thank you for supporting us. LEAD is officially 1 year old. Our first year started off with a bang with fostering diversity and inclusion in the entertainment industry. Then we kicked it off in the new year with a fresh start with Devon Franklin. We kept the momentum going with marketing for social change, and then the importance of meaningful AAPI representation in the entertainment industry. We are looking forward to continuing these important conversations in 2022. As we are wrapping up our speaker series for this year, we bring you The Return. We all have so many questions about this new normal and what it looks like. And we hope with today's discussion, it'll allow us to answer some of those questions and provide us with the necessary tools to move forward. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. Film Row will have a volunteer event opportunity on Saturday, December 11th. Please be on the lookout for that. There is limited space, so please sign up as soon as you see it. Second, the speaker series is being recorded and will be posted on the Film Row's page afterwards for future use. Lastly, we will have the last 15 minutes for any questions you may have. Should you have any, please enter them into the below Q&A and our committee members will be monitoring them throughout the program. Now let's get started. I have the privilege of introducing our moderator for this evening, Director of Development for Will Rogers Motion Picture Pioneers Foundation. She is responsible for all fundraising and donor relation efforts for the charity, including planning and executing all events and donor solicitation campaigns. In addition, she plans all fundraising and public relation activities, including industry events and social media efforts, including website content and email notification. She joined Will Rogers Charity in the summer of 2009 upon graduating from California State University, Long Beach that spring. Go Niners, because that is also my alumni. Please help me welcome Christina Bloomer. Hey, Christina.
Hello, Shelley. I didn't know you went to Long Beach. Fun fact. Go Beach.
Yes.
Well, I just want to thank everyone for having me here today. I am so thrilled to be a part of this. I think it's really great that Film Row has put these conversations together, particularly during this time when we can all use just that touch point and a way for us to all connect. So thank you so much to Film Row for doing this. Small housekeeping as I introduce our panelists. If I'm over here, it's because I'm reading. I promise I'm not watching batting practice for tonight's game. I am just making sure that I'm getting all the intros correct. So let's meet our panelists. First up, my colleague, Samantha Steepleton. Samantha is the Director of Social Services for the Will Rogers Motion Picture Pioneers Foundation. She's a licensed clinical social worker with advanced training in trauma-informed care. Samantha brings this knowledge to the table with her work with people in the film industry. She is passionate about learning and shares her understanding of how trauma and shame intersect to create limiting beliefs and coping strategies that impact people's lives. Sam, welcome. All righty. Up next, we have Mike Vian. Mike is the co-president of domestic distribution at STX Entertainment. Prior to joining STX in September of 2017, he spent 23 years on the WB distribution team where he oversaw the Western Division and all IMAX releases. Mike also has experience on the exhibition and vendor side of the business, working at both Regal Entertainment Group and Vision Media from 2015 to 2017. Mike is currently a Will Rogers Motion Picture Pioneers Foundation board member. Thank you, Mike. And he also served on the Variety Tent 25 board for 12 years. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you.
Up next, Anthony Fikes. He is the co-founder of Next Act Cinema. With little to no experience in the movie theater industry, and along with his co-founder, Robert Wright, Anthony turned a rundown 1930s Art Deco theater into a boutique entertainment theater offering cuisine, cocktails, and curated content in a setting that feels like the comfort of your own home, only better. The Next Act experience offers a state-of-the-art modern upscale entertainment destination right outside of Baltimore in Pikesville, Maryland. Next Act Cinema combines state-of-the-art theater design, sound, and image excellence, luxurious seating paired with sensational live interactive entertainment that complements the feature film you are viewing. Next Act is minority owned. Since opening in 2019, they have made tremendous traction and have gained the attention of Steve Harvey, Travel Noir, Huffington Post, Washington Post, and numerous local news and radio press. Anthony and Robert both have sales and marketing backgrounds in the healthcare industry. Anthony holds both his BA and his MBA degrees. Anthony, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And finally, Kip Smiley. Kip oversees the film buying process for a host of regional circuits and independent theater owners. He is a second-generation member of our industry with 35 years of experience. Smiley became VP of Film for Georgia Theater Company in 1994 and continues in that position today. Prior to that, he spent 10 years working for the Columbia Sony Pictures. His duties ranged from booking and sales in Atlanta to serving as the Western District Manager in Los Angeles. Smiley considers himself lucky to work in the motion picture industry with so many talented and charitable individuals. And for anyone that knows and loves Kip, he is the only one who is going to say something nice about other people in his own bio. God bless Kip. Kip, thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
So we have a really engaging conversation planned tonight surrounding the return. And I think what's intriguing about this topic, at least for me, is that the return, more likely than not, is going to mean something a little bit different for each of us. For some, it's the return to the office. For some, it's the return to social activities. It can be the return to kind of a normal schedule. So I'm really excited to see what that looks like for each of us. And for purposes of tonight, we are going to take a small look back just for some context, but really our focus is going to be forward facing, taking the experience that we've lived through for the last 18 months and see how do we turn that into what's coming next. My sister, when she went away to college, she joined a sorority and these ladies had arrows everywhere. And finally I said, what is with these arrows? And she said to me, the arrow, in order for it to move forward, it first has to come back. Think of like a bow and arrow, right? It has to come backwards first before it propels forward. So I think for us, it's a good place for us to start is this arrow of kind of, let's pull it back, let's see where we were, and then let's go ahead and move forward from that. So I want to start with Anthony. Let's pull the arrow back a little bit. So not only you're the newest member to the film industry in this group, welcome to this industry family. You are a minority business owner, of course, and I'm sure you faced some challenges getting your business started for a whole host of reasons, and we can get into those for sure. But I want to talk about the start. So you have you and your partner. So you leave the pharmaceutical industry. Let's touch a little bit on that and decide, let's open a theater. You're open for a year. You're celebrating your 1-year anniversary, and then COVID comes, doors close. What was that like? What did that process look like for you guys?
Yeah, so you're gonna make me think back on this, right? And that was already a hard time for me. So I tried to forget that in the past, right? So I think Robert and I, we were very much aware that normally about 20% of businesses all fail within the first 12 months, right? 50% of those businesses first fail within the first 5 years, and 60% of those businesses fail within the first decade. For minority-owned businesses, 8 out of 10 of them fail within the first 18 months. Wow. Those are huge statistics, right? And so we were very much aware that we also could have been in that camp. And I think, the fear that we had, it was kind of like being in, I would imagine as being in a big dark room trying to find a wall, right? And there's nowhere to go, right? And so we didn't have mentorship. We didn't have our background in the industry. All we knew that where we came from was that we had a very corporate type of mentality that we wanted to take and bring it to a small, local theater in a community that was really, really vibrant, that really, really wanted to support their artists. And so we saw this theater as an opportunity for us to be able to say, you know what, let's take a risk on ourselves because Robert he's also in audio, he's in theater, he loves that kind of thing. And so for me, I have more of the process, driven mind. And so it was kind of a good pairing. And so, again, we knew the statistic. We went forward with the idea of putting together a really, really strong business plan. But as a majority of small businesses, find is that you go to a bank with this business plan. You think that, you have dotted all your I's and crossed your T's, right? And so we presented our business plans to the bank and we weren't asking for a lot. Rob and I had great credit. We had saved up a lot. And so at that point, we thought that we were going to be a shoe-in to get this funding just to, help incur some of the capital expenditures that we needed in order to open up the theater. Mm-hmm. It didn't happen. The bank turned us down, as most small businesses actually find. And the thing is, not only did they turn us down, it was a local bank that we actually had made the decision to try to partner with. Right? And so, so what we found was that the ceiling for us to try to, get into an industry that already had an extremely high bar. There were like 5 to 6 Black-owned movie theaters across the country, right? So again, we didn't have a whole lot to kind of, take from. Getting into this industry, we had to do contracts. We were trying to work with, distributors. We had to find bookers, and then we also had to try to, open up a movie theater in a community, in a Jewish community, right? 2 Black-owned men in the Jewish community in Pikesville, right outside of Baltimore. I mean, there was challenges at first, right? And people don't see the fact that you are putting money on your credit card. They don't see that type of grit that you have to have when you're opening up a business. And again, we were fighting against all those statistics. So it was definitely an uphill battle, I think, at first.
Yeah, for sure. And you make it through that first year. I'm sure you're on a high. Oh my gosh, look at us. We did this. And then doors closed.
Yeah, so it was on our anniversary. So we had just come off an extremely successful end of the year. For example, what we learned about our theater was that our theater does really, really good with extremely curated content, right? So, for example, Harriet. When we launched, Harriet was our biggest selling movie of the entire year. Although there were movies like Avengers that played, right? Although there was movies like Lion King in that year. So we were riding off an extremely big high at the end of the year because Harriet launched in November. In March, in January we launched Bad Boys, and then in March we had launched The Banker. The Banker was so important to us because it told a story of 2 minority Black men trying to actually start a business and trying to start a bank. And so our first week we had done really, really well, but it had also launched on Apple TV. That's a completely different topic. We talk about that later. But the point is that we were launching The Banker, which is what we thought for our community that would actually help and kind of fuel some type of representation, right? It's like representation matters. And so we had this great movie, and then a week later, the governor decides to shut us down. So it was an extremely, extremely tough moment, I think, for any business, not just ours.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. Samantha, I want to turn to you next, kind of in this same, we're still kind of drawing our arrow back here. So theaters across the country are closing their doors. All of a sudden, eyes are on Pioneers Assistance Fund. We have a history of taking care of our own. We pride ourselves on that. We've always done it. Historically, a typical year for Pioneers Assistance Fund, we help a couple hundred people. Recent years, we've had natural disasters, hurricanes, fires. We had maybe 600, 700 people was a big year. And now all of a sudden, we're getting ready for thousands of people that we know are going to be calling us. What did that look like?
Yeah, well, for us, it looked like collaboration. So in-house, like the whole team got together to plan and create, how to implement this. How do we serve a large number of people? We knew a number were coming. I think we were estimating around 10,000 we ended up helping 7,000 in the first month. We processed 7,000 grants. So, I mean, it was incredible. And, you know, the thing when I saw this question, that's what that came to mind, was that sense of like collaboration. Like there's no way we could have done it, any one of us on our own, that we needed, like each person was like a different cog in the wheel. Yeah. So that first flurry of folks, we basically got those grants out, and then we were realizing like, okay, there's more need, and what are we going to do? So that's when we entered what we called phase 2. And I was really wanting to talk to everyone who came in so that we could get a sense of what their need was, do some mental health screening, offer other resources. So we hired a couple really great social workers to assist me and our other full-time social worker, Elisa. And we spoke to a couple thousand people last year, and really, like, you know, just we, you know, it was a collection. I mean, some folks, it was straightforward. There was their unemployment wasn't coming through, or, you know, they were having difficulty, you know, either receiving a payment or knowing what to do about. We were like talking to folks about everything, mental health and how to maintain their sanity at home. Some people were doing okay at home. Some people were feeling pretty isolated. Yeah. So yeah, it was a big event, and
no kidding.
We were proud of what we did.
Yeah, absolutely. You should be. Kip and Mike, I want to turn to you two. So we've heard from Anthony, who's brand new to our business, and now we're going to the other end of the spectrum there with two legends in the biz, coming from generations of legends in the business. And just kind of an overarching view, what do you think the biggest change that you've seen on the business overall as a result of COVID? Kip, do you want to start?
Sure, I will. By the way, that word legend just means old. And I appreciate that. But, that goes for you too, Mike. But
damn, anyway, you picked up on that.
Yeah, certainly. Listen, for me, the biggest change, particularly as a film buyer, has certainly been the new, certainly has been the new distribution patterns that have evolved. You know, adversity breeds creativity and experimentation. And as theaters closed, studios had to get creative to find a way to monetize the product they had in the pipeline. And as, you know, exhibitors, you know, not too long ago, have never considered playing product the way we are today. So the uncertainty that was out there led us to cooperation, and therefore, you know, kind of dislodged, I think on both sides, some of our pre-COVID positions.
Sure.
So, you know, no doubt that exclusivity is crucial. But certainly, I think the biggest change as far as what I do has been the new windows.
Okay, Mike.
Sure. You know, and I would add to that, Kip. You know, what my answer is consumer behavior. That's really the biggest change that I've seen because of COVID, and that has a lot to do with everything that you just spoke to, Kip. Studios had options, and by the way, thank goodness that exhibition was able to be flexible within that so that we could keep the industry alive and moving forward. But I remember going all the way back, you know, Anthony, we're talking about those weeks in March, and 1 week in front of the COVID shutdown, we were at my office Friday night until 8 or 9 o'clock at night, calling exhibitors and saying, sorry, we're going to have to pull My Spy off of the release schedule for next week. And the reason that we had to do that is we knew what was coming, but thank goodness that we had that option and that we were able to go to a different model. For a studio, for a content provider the size of STX, it allows us to keep our doors open and move forward. But you sit there now, fast forward to this weekend, we saw 1.9 million households estimated watch Dune at home while they still performed and did over $40 million at the box office, and people were rushing out to see it in PLFs and IMAX and 3D and Dolby Atmos and everything else. So there it is, consumer behavior.
Yeah, absolutely. Both very good observations there. Anthony, as businesses across the country opened up after the shutdown, one of the biggest obstacles that they were facing then, and I would argue are still facing, is staffing. So considering you were only open a year prior to closing your doors, I imagine staffing to be particularly challenging for you then and potentially now. What did staffing look like? Were you able to keep people? Did people come back?
Yeah. So good question. So we're an industry that has a pretty high turnover rate anyway. And especially now, I think, my concern with the COVID, what happened with COVID, is that somehow I think the psyche of people coming back to work has fundamentally changed. I think that's kind of hard, trying to get people back. But for the most part, Robin and I took a really, really strong effort in putting in making sure that our people were taken care of even before COVID. And what I mean by that is that, although we were a small business, we wanted to make sure that we incentivized them to make sure that they actually enjoyed being at work in general, right? And so I think, as small business owners, we kind of sometimes forget that we have to think about the individual person. And so when we did that, what we found, Christina, is that majority of our staff actually wanted to come back. Now, whether or not we actually had the revenue to bring everyone back, that's a completely different story. But what we did find was that we got some funding from the community. The community really supported us. And so that actually allowed us to hire back a lot of our staff and to make it through before we kind of got these influx of grants that kind of came through that you guys might have heard of throughout the industry within like SVOG. So there was a lot of grant money that came in. And so, for us, our staffing initially, we took care of them early on, so they wanted to come back. That has shifted and changed, obviously, because like I said, turnover is extremely high. And so we were running right around 15 people early on when we first kind of opened. So now we're running at right around 8. So it has changed. Recruiting has also been a big challenge. Recruiting the right people has been more of a challenge. But lately, within the past 2 or 3 weeks, we've been getting a lot of resumes. So we've been screening the right candidates. So maybe things are starting to shift back in some of these restaurants, because we're not just a movie theater, so we also serve food. So maybe the shift is coming back into the favor of a lot of these employers.
Sure. Just out of curiosity, historically working at a movie theater was kind of this super fun job that high school kids or even young college, they would love working at the theater because there were so many perks. What did you find to be a popular incentive that works well with your employees?
Yeah, so I think, employees, they want to come to work and feel appreciated, right? And so one of the things that we do, and again, this is kind of Rob's corporate mindset, we actually have sit downs with them and we take them individually and talk to them and talk about, okay, so here's how the month has gone. And we have these kind of like these pull-ups, right? Where the employees are engaged, right? So another thing is too, I have a different type of background. So I actually sat down with a lot of my employees and started talking, because again, I have to make sure that I understand the community that we serve, right? And so one of the things that Rob and I is really important to us is kind of create this generational wealth. And so we actually sit down and talk to these guys actually around investing, around being entrepreneurs, right? So it's things more so than just being a movie theater and a place that you come to work. It's also enriching and giving them something additive to their life. And so I think, those in of itself are incentives. And also, you want to make it a fun place to work, right? And so, whenever I go in, I see the employees, we're always high-fiving and, we're joking around. So you do those type of things because you realize the importance of having a good employee.
Oh, I love that. That's great. Mm-hmm. Samantha, I want to stick to staffing. The vast majority of people that you helped were movie theater workers. Did you get the sense that people were eager to go back to work, that they wanted to get back into the theater?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I would say the majority of people told us they wanted to get back to work, especially at the beginning when there was this sense of just like not knowing when it would change. And, as a social worker, we know like and most of us know this, like having a purpose is a basic human need. So for a lot of us, work is a big part of our personality and well-being. So not having it can be frightening. Yeah. so that's just something that we noticed, that like, you know, people have different responses to overwhelming experiences, and they're going to have different ways to cope. So some have better coping skills than others. So that was like another thing that we saw.
Okay.
And just wanted to add in there too with that, like, you know, our nervous systems are always trying to gauge for safety. So during the pandemic, some people just found it soothing to be at home, like they were okay. And other people found it very activating, or like they felt anxious. So the response to big events is so individual too. It's like, what are their resources like? What's it like at home?
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Sure.
what kind of things, like what were the issues that they were having? So, and just noticing too that, like, you know, some folks, even if they, because there's also like, there's a level of privilege that we talk about here. Like, you know, some people had savings and they had secure housing. Some folks didn't. That made a difference to how they were feeling about getting back to work, I think. And then also we noticed like there's some people that were super prepared, and it was still like a very scary situation. So even if they had the savings, it didn't matter. It was bringing up this kind of survival response. So,
right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Kip and Mike, I'll turn back to you. So across the board, businesses, companies, individuals, they're all implementing new business practices or new just practices in general to stay operational during the last year and a half. What were some of the things that you shifted in order to kind of get through this transition time of going home and now coming back into the office for some of us? And do you think any of these things are going to stick around? Mike, if you want to go first this time.
Sure, I'll stick on, there's a couple ways to answer that, but I'll stick on the subject of staffing since that was what we've been talking about. In my case, it's certainly been having to work with fewer and fewer people. And I know that that's been across the board, whether you're an exhibitor or even at some of the larger studios we've seen, the number of people that work with us, you know, dramatically decrease. And a result of that has been exposure to more and more departments within your company. When we were back in February and we did a very small release of a movie called The Mauritanian, I was simultaneously acting as in-theater marketing, making sure that the delivery of the content and keys to theaters was going on, and then being on the phone with people and actually selling the movie to Kip and getting holdovers for him. So the exposure to doing all of that and understanding all of that. And the only thing that I'll add on top of that from my side is clearly there has to be a greater understanding than ever. There was a time where I can just focus in purely on theatrical. And now you have to have that understanding, the economics of everything across the board, and what a PVOD means, in what selling to a streamer means, if there's a theatrical window to a PVOD, if there's a theatrical window to a streamer. So understanding the economics of that overall business plan is really important right now. And that will stick, absolutely will stick.
Sure.
Kip?
Yeah, certainly, you know, as far as my company, we're a pretty small company. So, you know, we're still working through working at the office and working at home, and we're going through, and certainly the most important thing is the health of our employees. You know, beyond that, a lot of the clients that we represented, I mean, there was things that were implemented. You know, we had to be creative, and we kind of evolved with a new private show model, and that became very important for exhibition survival. So that's one thing that changed and expanded greatly through this whole process. And I think it's going to be here to stay. I think it's going to be part of the fabric of theater exhibition from now on, maybe in somewhat limited or expanded versions. So private shows are something that happened, you know, with our clients for sure. And the other thing that really happened is, you know, we were desperate. We were looking for product. We're looking for a way to fill the screens. And, you know, Hollywood, rightfully so, was probably sitting, you know, waiting for it to be a safe place for patrons to have confidence to come back to the movie theater. So we were desperate to try to find something. So listen, we were already using alternative content pre-COVID, don't get me wrong, but certainly we have expanded our vision in a sense of the kind of content that we're bringing into the theaters, and certainly have gotten more creative. And I think I found out that that's important, going to be an important part of our identity moving forward. Don't forget that movies will always be our bread and butter, hands down.
Yeah.
But certainly this alternative content is getting more and more important, and going to complement that, in a way moving forward. And so I think as a film buyer, having to Mike's point, having all that exposure to all that different kind of content and all those, looking outside of the box. Mm-hmm. I think the film buyer pre-COVID is a lot different film buyer now, and you have to be to move forward. So.
Sure. Great. Those are great points there. Sticking to sort of changes that have happened, I want to open this up to everyone, and just from a broad sense, what concerns you the most about the effects that the pandemic and the closures have had on our business as a whole? Anthony, do you want to jump in there?
Yeah. Ooh, I think I'm concerned around whether or not moviegoers are going to, at what point will moviegoers feel comfortable coming back, right? And are we doing enough as an industry to help speed up that process, right? I think there are some movies that are just made to be played in the movies. Dune is just one of those movies that you cannot watch at home. You just can't, right? I saw it. It is an amazing movie. And if I would have watched it on my, 70-inch screen, even if I had a sound bar and if I had the best equipment, I'm not going to get the theatrical feel, right? And so some movies are made to be seen on the big screen. And so I think, marketing, better. I think another concern that I have is we as exhibitors have to make it so that our customers also feel comfortable and our guests feel comfortable coming back, right? So one of the things that we did in our theater, because Robin and I, and by the way, I wanted to say this. So Robin and I are actually still in healthcare, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so we have to make them feel comfortable. And so what we did was we put purifiers in each of our theaters, as well as in our auditorium. We do temperature checks, we give hand sanitizer. So we're trying to do things to make moviegoers feel comfortable coming back. And so I think, as we work, what we've learned being in this industry is that the family is so small. Everyone supports everyone in this industry. It is insane, right? And so we didn't know it before we got in, but we learned it now. So I want to make sure that we're doing our part as a community to make moviegoers feel comfortable coming back. I don't care if it's an AMC or if it's a Regal or if it's the next act. But I think the more moviegoers feel comfortable coming back, I think that we will, by supporting each other, then we can help support the community, and the community will start feeling more comfortable. And then we can start, talking about, I think to Kip's point, and getting movies come out faster. But we just got to we have to get moviegoers out back into the theaters for what's playing now.
Okay, great. Anyone else want to weigh in on a concern? All right. So let's talk about kind of this transition of working from home and going back to the office. So working from home obviously people have done it for years. There are some people who have only exclusively worked from home. And during COVID, however, we have a much larger population of people being forced into this new arrangement. So Samantha, I want to turn to you from a mental health perspective. Are there any studies on whether working from home has an impact on mental health, either, plus on the good side or the bad side? I imagine for some people, if they have a long drive or they maybe don't really get along with their coworkers too well, the work from home was probably a blessing. And then for other people, it's just them and their cat, like, oh God, there's no one to talk to. Is there any kind of research on that?
Yeah, well, I imagine there is research. There's research for so many things, but it kind of touched on what we were talking about earlier. It's individualized, just like you said, like somebody might have the ability to create a space at home where they can work comfortably, and other people are sharing homes with, roommates or family, children, pets, as you mentioned. So, I think it's it's that, and then it's also that sense of like, what do they get from the office? Is there collaboration and community, or is it a toxic environment? I think the commute, I think people are weighing all of this in right now.
Yeah.
And deciding, because when has anyone ever had that much time where we were all forced to be at home and to kind of feel into that. So, I mean, I think COVID proved that we can work effectively from home, and people are trying to figure out, and, you know, offices, our office, lots of people across the country trying to figure out what does that look like now. Mm-hmm. And it's just good to remember that there's no shoulds. Like, there's nothing, it's individualized. Some people really want to get back to the office, and some are really wanting that hybrid experience of like, you know, maybe a little bit of time and a little bit at home. And, you know, I just feel like it's a real opportunity here for everyone, you know, if you have the luxury to do so, to really listen and to yourself, and like, what's feeling good? What do I want? And what do I need? And then try to shape it, because it's really the time to do that. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mike, what about you? Did you work from home? Were you in the office? What did that transition look like for you?
Yeah, so it's been a little bit of both, but I'll tell you right now, the situation that we're in at STX is we are going in 2 to 3 days a week, primarily Monday through Wednesday.
Okay.
I will tell you that from a traffic perspective, the last 2 days, I have sat in traffic, dead stop traffic from DeSoto all the way to Pass Avenue and Burbank. And you are immediately reminded of how unproductive that time is.
Sure.
But I will say this, it's been a nice transition to be able to go in a couple, 2-3 days. Mm-hmm. Without a doubt, if people just after 2 years start going back 5 days a week, I promise you it is going to be a shock to the system. Even if you want to be there, it is going to be a shock to the system. It feels strange. It starts to feel a little bit more regular after a period of time. But I even found that I was a little bit out of practice because I was so used to working from the house that one day I realized that our entire distribution sales team was there, and I could just ask them to get together in a conference room, and we had our masks on and sat 6 feet apart, but we could sit there and enjoy each other's company and interact. Mm-hmm. And I found myself almost forgetting that I could do that, even though we were sitting in the office.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's no doubt it's a shock to the system. So slow boat, a couple of days at mm-hmm. first, roll into 3 or 4 days, and hopefully everybody will buy into a hybrid. It's my own opinion now. Everybody will buy into a hybrid where 5 days a week, sort of, the old adage, chain to the desk is unnecessary.
Kip, what about you? Were you home? Were you in the office? Have you always been home? What did that look like for you?
I was just home for actually the only time I was home was when I actually had COVID, which was no big deal for me, thank God. And, but it was, my office is very close. My commute is very short.
Okay.
And so, I would just say this though, just to comment on that. The one thing that I miss is the spontaneous collaboration that you get from being together.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that happens organically and provides a lot of fruit. Mm-hmm. I find it harder now. It's you have to be super intentional to collaborate when you're doing it via Zoom or setting these meetings and everything. And the other thing I will say is, just from a personal standpoint, is that I think it's important. I think it's important to separate work from home, and I think that work already bleeds enough mm-hmm. into our home environment, and I just wonder if this expands even more by working from home, trying to, be your family, and if it just bleeds over into important family time and important personal time that I think is healthy for everyone.
That's right.
Absolutely.
So it's just my comments on what I've noticed.
And Kip, I'll just jump in real quick and just add to that. And I understand the concern for that without question. And we all have to watch when that line becomes too blurred. But I will also say that one of the things that I've enjoyed as my kids were home and I was working from home is just that ability to at lunchtime, go out and grab lunch with them. If they needed a ride to school or pick up from school, that I could do that. If I needed to run to a quick appointment, whether it was for a haircut or a doctor, I could do that. And it gave me the ability to feel really good about diving into work at 7 o'clock at night, because I knew I had that flexibility during the day. But I agree with you 100%. We have to be real.
You got to be intentional about it, for sure.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good segue into kind of boundaries that Samantha, I wanted to have you weigh in on, is this idea of, just from working with you, I've heard you have these conversations, whether it be with clients or just in casual conversation, about being really clear about your boundaries. And, this modern working world, and in this business in particular, there's sort of this expectation that 24/7 we're available. And I think that expectation was a little bit there even prior to COVID, but now, we're at home, and it's just sort of, when does work stop and personal life start? Is there any kind of tips you have there, or ways that we can kind of look at that to make sure that we're putting ourselves, in a position for success?
Sure, I can try. I mean, the thing is with boundaries is we create boundaries to provide a sense of safety. And safety is really important for personal growth, well-being, all of it. And if you didn't learn how to set healthy boundaries, and a lot of us haven't, it's, that's this kind of question will be, it could be, it could just bring up some challenging feelings or make you wonder, like, how do I do that? I mean, it is a skill that you can learn. Mm-hmm. And the thing I wanted to touch on with that work-life balance is, like, we really are whole beings. So, I look at it as finding the balance within yourself. So, like, finding what works for you, like what brings you that sense of feeling of calm, because the more we study mental health, the more it's really about, like, what's your nervous system doing? So if your nervous system is responding to the here and now, like right now, you're calm and you're engaged. But if it gets activated in a way that it's reminding you of something else, it's like we have this ancient intelligence system, which is our fight, flight, or freeze response, which most people have heard of by now. And that when that goes online, you're in the past. So you're not responding in a present moment. So setting a boundary is super difficult in that moment, because you're like 12 years old or 10, or 5 or whatever. Right. So, boundaries, setting boundaries, saying no to additional work can be difficult, because it's triggering that old response. And the industry is really, just like you mentioned, Christina, we're in this kind of industry, and where it's like, there's a line of people that will take your job, or, like people might say, somebody would give their right arm to do that kind of work. And so then that brings up, like, when our bodies want to say no, and we want to set a boundary, that feeling comes up of like, oh, I don't want to lose my job. Sure. Then we're in survival mode. So then we're no longer in the present, and our ability to set that boundary goes offline. So this takes practice. I want to say this, it's really easy to talk about and say, but it's difficult to execute. But it's really about paying attention and knowing certain things are going to activate you. So if you know that when you go and ask for time off, or you have this, there's a big project, but you're already tapped out, just realize you're gonna get activated and be aware of it. Like, okay, I know this anxiety is gonna come up. And when we do that, we create safety for ourselves, because ourselves are saying, oh, okay, we know we're gonna get anxious. We know what we do when we get anxious. We're gonna do a little calming, right before. And so that helps you to, like, calm yourself down and get yourself into a place where you can say, okay, maybe no, I can't do this. Because right. We often interpret the no as, oh, I'm doing the wrong thing. Mm-hmm. And then we override the no. And then, years go by and you're not saying no and not setting boundaries. So yeah, so just want to just remember that it's finding that internal sense of what feels right for you. So it's again, it's individual for everybody, and it's work. It's important work. It's good work, because once you have good boundaries, your relationships improve both work and professionally. So I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Sure.
Anthony, I think you have an interesting perspective, just because you're obviously in the film industry, but then you also are still working in the healthcare industry. So did you find any kind of differences with the work from home, work-life balance in sort of each of those sectors, or did you find them to be similar?
Yeah, I think, well, I mean, so I have a ton of Zoom calls on a regular basis. Rob and I do. We travel a lot for work, but we also then have this business that we have to kind of manage. And so I think, I can relate to, to Kip, to Mike, to Samantha. I think in that also, so my son was born in 2019 in December. And when all this happened, right, he was an infant, he was small, right? And I hear about, and my wife has a really, really important role in her job. And so for both of us, we actually got a chance to see him grow, right? To cultivate our relationship with him. And most parents don't have that opportunity. So I think, for us, we learn that there's joy in just the ordinary, right? I think, that's the positives, right? Is that we took, kind of what could have been an extremely terrible moment, right? And we found joy in him. Now, I will say though that I agree with Mike that there are times where I need to, and Mike and Kip, where I need the balance, right? So I enjoy spending time with him, but because I was so used to and I was wired to travel, I find myself wanting to go back to that, being in front of my clients, talking with them. Like I miss the interaction of people. And to me personally and Rob, we weren't made to be in a box. So like we enjoy working with individuals. We love the collaboration. We love the thoughtfulness and the mindfulness that goes into working with individuals. So I do find that there are times when the Zoom calls and the WebExes, they get too much for me. And so I have to walk away and then actually get out in the field and actually, see people. In COVID, right? So, but yeah, I find myself wanting to get out. And then also, even with my staff, I just sometimes want to call or connect with them. So I may go to see them on a weekend as opposed to a weekday because I'm working. So I need that balance for sure.
This is just a general wondering, probably Mike would be best to answer this. This is just, I read an article in the Wall Street Journal they were describing the sort of post-apocalyptic experience of people coming back into their offices where they were told one day, you have to go home and we don't know when you'll be back. And in some cases it was literally a year and a half. So they're coming back to like dusty office chairs and monitors that are flickering and plants that have just taken over. Did you find anything crazy in your office?
Yeah. And I'll say sadly, yeah, there was some stuff on there. There was some stuff that I can't talk about, but but sadly there were some people that had left, and when you came back in and you saw that they had left their desk one day, and they just thought maybe they'd be back in a week or two, and then we came back in and we saw that they still had some personal belongings there. That was one of the first things I wanted to clean up. But yeah, when I first came back, I noticed the emptiness more than anything. And there were those things that were on desk, and you saw an email from 13 months ago, but there was an emptiness about the building and our kitchen, where normally everyone comes together and shares stories, work experience, and that was really sad.
Yeah.
I have to admit.
Yes.
Anthony, it sounds like you had a bit of that too.
Oh my goodness, yes, absolutely. So remember, for our industry, we shut down. Sure. You guys remember that? Like the industry literally shut down. And so we stopped on March 16th, and we opened back up on what was called affectionately Juneteenth. So we were closed for months. And so Rob and I would go there. And I agree with Mike, it was a weird feeling to not be able to see your employees, to not be able to see guests. But then I don't know what happened when we decided to turn off our lights. It's as if the building became old. Like we had already renovated this 1930 Deco theater, and it was like it reverted back. It regressed. It was quite interesting. And so like candy has started to expire, right? We had to like throw out beer and wine and food. It was like it was quite interesting, the feeling that you got going into your business when just a couple of weeks ago you were open, you were vibrant, you know, lively, to somewhere that it was a very dark place. You could have, in that moment, it definitely could have been like, you know what, this is it, because you at that point you didn't see an end to it either, right? Our industry shut down for months, so it was interesting, those moments.
So sort of taking all of that, 2020 was a year, and a bit of 2021. So I think it'd be short-sighted for us to think that all of it was negative and catastrophic. So there has to be some positive takeaways over the last 18 months or so. And I'm curious to hear what everyone's opinion is of something positive that they took away from this experience. And Sam, I'll start with you.
Well, I mean, professionally, I mean, I heard again and again, there were a lot of people who had similar experiences to Mike and Anthony about enjoying their kids or enjoying certain aspects of their lives that they were really too busy before to enjoy. You know, most of the folks that call us are theater employees, and the general managers they are really committed, hardworking folks, and they are working holidays and weekends and nights. And suddenly they had all that time with their family. So, you know, yeah, I think that a lot of people were kind of resetting on certain things. I wonder if they'll do some studies out of that, like how many people made serious life shifts, like I want to do this more. The other thing I heard that I thought was a real positive is people were holding on to their money because they weren't out spending it, and they realized, oh, I don't really need that stuff. And that's, you know, some of that's not great for our economy, but some of it is. It's that sense of like, maybe I'll have more savings, or maybe I'll reduce how much I spend each month and put more away for retirement. So those two things I think are the big ones for me.
Okay. Kip, what about you?
Yeah, listen, you know, on a personal note, I just realized the blind spots that I had. I really did. I found a new heart of gratitude for so many different things, for the little things that I just ignored. And I have to say, from a personal perspective, that I find myself, as we move forward and we start getting busy again, I have to really focus on that heart of gratitude to remember it. And I don't want to lose that. And that's just on a personal note, that's something that I found really positive that came out. And I'm very optimistic about our business too. So I'm very excited and optimistic about the future of our business. I think we've learned a lot. And I think we are extremely creative on both sides right now. And I think it's going to be better. We're going to come out better on the other end. I really do.
Absolutely. Mike?
I'll just start by saying, Kip, very well said.
Yeah.
Very well said. I will echo what Kip was talking about at the end. If there is a positive that came out in the industry, what is going on right now, the different things that we are experimenting with in the industry, the shrinking of windows, the ability to talk to each other about different approaches to releases, and they don't all have to be the same. That rigid line that existed that right now does not exist. COVID forced that conversation. It had to happen, and we probably we still today wouldn't be talking about it if COVID didn't happen. So I appreciate that. And yes, there's been some tough sledding along the way, but we're better off for it.
Absolutely. And Anthony, what about you?
Yeah, so for us, I think the positive sides of this, I mean, there's been a lot. I think, again, we've learned that I think as a small business, that we have to make sure that we're making the right decisions always, right? Because we don't have a lifeline that we can kind of call in order to kind of bail us out, right? Like, so we have to make the best financial decisions for our business every single day as a small business, every day. It doesn't stop, right? I think the other thing is, like I said before, is that I learned so much that this industry really takes care of its own, right? And so we were able to call on, tech guys from different theater operators, exhibitors within our own area to help support us kind of get up, back and running. I mean, because that's just how much everyone supports each other, in this industry. I also learned that you got to take care of your people. I think, those are the positive things that we also learned is that, the employees that we hire, these are guys or, young people, kind of like when I was growing up, grew up on the south side of Chicago, not having much. And so, breathing into them and supporting them as they go through things like COVID, I think to Samantha's point, we had to be sounding boards for those individuals oftentimes, right? Because, they were out of a job, they were having things happen at their own home. So, I learned that I have so much more to give than just being a business owner, but being, again, representation matters and being a reflection of who they want to be. And so I have to kind of walk that walk, right? And so, I'll also say, just kind of look at what most small businesses have learned about themselves, right? And so, we actually grew our ability to understand our business better than what we would have we would not have known prior to COVID, right? And so we integrated a lot more things than we would have did in the past. So we learned a lot. We definitely learned a lot through this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to thank all of you for your candor and for your input. I know we have some audience questions, and I want to bring up Carl Laguerre to go ahead and field some of those. There he is. Hi, Carl.
Hey, Christina. How you doing?
Good.
I mean, you're a tough act to follow, Christina. You really are. Hi, everyone. How you guys doing? I'm Carl, by the way. And, I'm so glad to be here with you guys. We have 4 amazing panelists. And, I just have to say, I've never seen the group chat so active before. So it's so good to see the group chat really active. Everybody seems to be so interested with the great knowledge you guys are sharing with us. And the first question is right here in the group chat. It's for Anthony. How do you change from survival mode to expansion mode right now in terms of the success of your theater?
Yeah, so survival mode wasn't a pivot for us. It was more like we were forced to do it, right? Oftentimes I think, people talk about pivoting, it sometimes can be like more voluntary. So I think, we went into survival mode probably the day that we shut down. And I think, for Next Act Cinema, our idea was to try to expand on the services that we offer, as opposed to just kind of thinking about, what we have been doing for the first 12 months that we were in business. And so expansion for us means that we need to have more offerings for our guests outside of just movies, right? And so some of the things, that we're thinking about doing and things that we've done is actually, bring the community in for community discussions. We actually had an outdoor community discussion, that talked about when everything was happening with the BLM movement. We actually brought the community together for talks on that. So we're, it may not be expansion by the brick and mortar, type mentality, but it's more expansion around bringing in, different customers, a different customer type, different customer segment into the business, where they can experience kind of what Next has to offer outside of just movies. And that's kind of what we're trying to do, is trying to go beyond just the movies to also get much more active within the community.
And that's a good segue into the next question, because the next question was, very similar. What is the alternate content and expanded offerings? Now you explained yours, but coming from STX, where they're a distributor. Mike, this is a question for you. What are you guys doing at STX, or what would you say the the distribution industry is doing in order to provide alternate content or expanded selections?
So for us, it was trying to find if there were some opportunities for titles that weren't necessarily earmarked to go theatrical during the shutdown or during the reopening, and see if we could offer them in at least some way. The other thing that we were able to do is, thankfully, STX has been around long enough now that there's a library. And when we were talking about the private shows, whether it was Bad Moms Christmas, which was the perfect example of something that we did with a bunch of people back in the Thanksgiving Christmas range, those were the kind of titles that we were able to offer. And what I really enjoyed about working with Exhibition at that time is there was a recognition that Exhibition was trying to get back on their feet. There was a recognition that people would come out for movies like A Bad Mom's Christmas and have a girls' night out or whatever it might be. And we didn't need to look at that as an opportunity to make a lot of money. It was more of just serving the industry and trying to get people to walk back in those doors. So I think that was one of our best moments.
Thank you, Mike. And Kip, I had the same question for you. What are some things as an exhibitor that you're looking to do to provide the community with expanded selections or alternate content?
We're looking at everything. I mean, we're looking at concerts, a lot of things we were doing pre-COVID, but we're kind of expanding that look. But concerts, operas, just different ways of marketing our auditoriums privately to our community is another way. And certainly trying to eventize maybe a classic film series or something like that, just trying to communicate and try to serve our community with what they want. So, yeah. And really, it goes out to my clients who are really doing a great job as far in all of Exhibition, because they're bringing in alcohol, they're fine dining, there's bowling, there's all kinds of ways that they're expanding their business. They're really becoming entertainment providers.
That's right.
So those are just some of the things that are happening.
Thank you, Kip. And Sam, I had a question for you in regards of, I've heard some people say that, they're going to start reading this book during COVID, during the shutdown quarantine time, where they're going to start a book or they're going to write that novel or they're going to work out. What about if you don't get those things done? Because I'm starting to hear now that there's some people who are, they're starting to get depressed because they feel like they didn't accomplish anything for the 13 months. What would you say about that?
Well, I mean, this is going to sound kind of like a platitude, but the kinder you can be to yourself, the better. It's just a way to heal yourself, is to realize, like, one, in our culture, we're under a lot of pressure to perform. Hundreds of years ago, we would just be allowed to live and eat and hunt, and have families. I mean, we are expected to do so much. So I think that putting that lens on that, and there's so much there. It's also some people's, when their nervous system, I talk about that a lot, but that's really where we're headed in the psychology world, is looking at like what the nervous system is doing. So with COVID, when people went home, their nervous systems a lot of folks calmed down. So when you're in that calm state, you might not necessarily be in that state where you're like, hey, I want to perform. You might be like, hey, I want to just enjoy this. So, that permission to just allow yourself to have had whatever your experience was. I mean, it was a pandemic. No one here's ever experienced a pandemic before. It was new to all of us. And it's very traumatic. We didn't know at the beginning. If you remember, at the beginning, it was very scary. We've gotten used to it, but at the beginning, it was scary for us. So, that fear, sometimes fear makes you shut down. And if you shut down, I would suggest there might be, maybe there's work for you to do. Maybe there's something in the past that was too overwhelming and now you're shutting down. It could be so many things, but yeah. The key is to get curious. If you can stay curious about yourself, you'll continue to grow. It's when we go into those old fight, flight, or freeze responses, or that old way of kind of disconnecting because we don't want to feel it, then you're lost. So if you can just be like, I wonder why I slept, I slept in. I mean, I wonder why I didn't exercise. I mean, just get curious about it. That's what I would say.
Thank you. That's a great answer. And the next question, it'll be interesting to see where, because we have distributors and we have exhibitors. So the next question is, how have you been able to maintain employee morale while working remotely? And what can employees and managers do to improve morale as we begin to work, as we begin to work, to return to work in person?
Question.
Mike, you want to take this one off?
Well, yeah, and I will. And then I know Anthony's going to have a lot on this. I think it's staying in constant contact. And one of the stories that I will share is that at STX, we went through a period of time. I know Disney went through the same thing where there were a lot of our staff was furloughed. And we thought that was going to be a short period of time, and it ended up extending to almost twice the amount of time that we thought. And it was so important to make sure that you were just checking in and saying hello. And never once would I even attempt to call somebody that was furloughed, who was part of my team, and bring up anything work related. It was all about, how are things? Are you able to get out of the house? And I was calling different people in different situations. Some people lived alone, but they had a pet. Some people lived alone and had nothing. Some people had a family. So it was always about, how are you doing? How are you okay? Because it's so important for them just to know that, yeah, I remember you're there, and I can't wait till the day that we're re-engaging in business again, but let's just connect on a personal level. So that's how I was able to do it. Anthony?
Yeah, I think similar, Mike. I think some of the things that we did was we tried to make sure that we were very intentional about going the extra mile for our staff, understanding kind of what they had gone through. I think, moviegoers in and of itself coming to the theater, coming to our business, they actually would energize our employees. So our employees didn't have the opportunity to do that, right? Another way that, in the past, what we had done, so for example, I'm going to take this movie, Hustlers. Remember the movie Hustlers, right? You guys remember that movie? So how we got it, and we did phenomenal with Hustlers. And the reason why we did so well with Hustlers is because what we did, and talk about KIPP and change into just not just being a movie theater, but being an entertainment venue, we brought in a masseuse. We had costumes for a lot of the ladies when they did Ladies Night Out. Like, we made it an event, right? And we did really, really, really well on Hustlers. But we also got the employees involved, right? So they dressed up in costumes, right? And so one guy had on like a tuxedo. One guy had on a bow tie. So it's those type of things. But then with COVID, it was more. So how can Anthony and Robert be those type of business owners, small business owners that checked in with their staff in a way that didn't focus on the business, I think, to your point, Mike. And so, we would, do things like, give them a call. Rob and I would help them out in ways that aren't typical if they needed us. And I think, and we also, so I talked about, we had that long break. We also brought them back in too, in order to help revitalize the theater back again, right? So that they can stay connected to it, right? So they can also be a part of the next phase. Once Next Act Cinema opened back up, they were going to be a part of it, right? Because they helped restore us again. So it's like, just kind of checking in with them, being that constant like friend or as well as an employer, it's important, I think, especially with any small business in order to thrive. And COVID kind of just put a completely different, spin on it. So.
And I just want to go on record. I did not pay Anthony to use Hustlers as an example.
Anthony's good. I'll tell you what, Anthony's good.
Hey, ST, I remember that movie, guy. It was really well. It was strong for us.
And Kip, I didn't want to leave you out. Kip, is there anything you wanted to add, Kip, to this?
No, I mean, I just echo what Mike and Anthony have said. I think part of it also was for me and our team. You know, we're a small team, but I felt like communication was the key. You know, both the hybrid communicating about, you know, weekly communicating about what's going on, you know, with us personally, you know, as well as, you know, caring for each other. So, you know, authentically. I mean, we're a small company and we're family, and it's a lot easier to do when you're small. So certainly communication was key.
Thank you so much. And you know, this concludes the end of the Q&A section, but I just wanted to extend my thank yous to everyone on the panel: Samantha, Kip, Mike, Anthony, of course Christina. Thank you for hosting. And yeah, I'm going to pass this on now to Film Row President Melanie Valera, who will take it away. And thank you guys for having me.
Carl.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you all for being a part of this important conversation. This has been really eye-opening and just helpful to just talk it out. I know that the landscape has certainly changed over the last year and a half, but I think we can all agree that this industry is very resilient. Our community is very resilient, and we will certainly, you know, come back strong. We already are. You could see it on the big screen. And, you know, it's so great to see that so many have tuned in to this last speaker series for 2021. I know that Shelley said that it is our year anniversary. It has been a great year sharing these conversations with all of you, and for, you know, just supporting us throughout this time. I think it's important to stay connected and to communicate, as you all just touched on. Mike, Anthony, Kip, Samantha, Christina, thank you so much for joining us today. I also just want to point out that there will be more to come from Film Row and LEAD in the coming year in 2022. And before we get there, we will have a day of service for those of you who are available to join us on that day. We will be packing items for those that are in need. That will be on Saturday, December 11th. Space is limited, but you can go on our website, filmrow.org, and sign up. But we're looking forward to giving back to our community. We also are going to relaunch a second mentorship program in February of next year, so stay tuned for that. We had great engagement on the first round, so we hope to see all of you back and more of you join. And also, we are planning another speaker series with a Women's History panel for Women's History Month for next year. And we're going to talk about some great things, but I hope that we can all see each other in person soon. And thank you all again for tuning in. Great to see all of you. Thanks, Christina. Thanks, Samantha.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Take care.